All right, let's dive into May 1968 in France. Paris, the city of lights, love, and, well, barricades. Yeah,
Americans.
barricades. Because in May 68, the romantic image of Paris kind of went up in flames, literally. Student uprisings, factory strikes, the whole country on edge.
It was a wild time, that's for sure.
It's a story people think they know, but I think we can uncover some of the more surprising things that turned Paris into, well, a powder keg. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. What's interesting is that it wasn't a simple story, you know? It wasn't just Vietnam War protests or just being anti-establishment. It was deeper than that. France in the 60s, it was a nation with these deep tensions, like a society about to completely transform.
Right, because on the surface, France was in the middle of the Trente Glorieuses.
Right, 30 years of economic boom after World War II.
Exactly, so things seem to be going pretty well. So what was going on beneath the surface?
Well, I mean, the economic boom, it was real, but there was this unease underneath it all. The effects of decolonization, especially leaving Algeria in 62, that was traumatic for France.
I can imagine.
It's like losing part of your national identity, right? Disillusionment with the government, refugees, it all really destabilized French society.
And it wasn't just Algeria, right? France was changing rapidly in other ways. Huge migration from rural areas to cities. I mean, all these sources talk about overcrowded housing, alienation, especially among the younger generation.
Oh, absolutely. And that demographic shift, it fed directly into the problems brewing at universities. Huge increase in enrollment, but, well, the universities just couldn't handle it.
Right, totally.
Students crammed into these hastily built, overcrowded campuses, often far away from, the intellectual and cultural heart of Paris.
So they felt isolated.
Exactly. It's no wonder they felt disconnected, ignored, like their needs didn't matter.
So we've got this backdrop of tension, economically, socially,
Mhm.
and then there's this strange incident at Nanterre University, something about swimming pools and dorms.
Ugh, and Nanterre. Nanterre was like a perfect example of all these frustrations. Isolated location, terrible facilities, and these incredibly strict rules, really outdated. And yeah, it started with students wanting access to female dorms after curfew.
Seriously.
It sounds crazy now, but back then it was a huge deal, and the university cracked down hard.
So a very strict social environment. How did this little incident at a suburban university turn into a nationwide uprising?
Well, it was the spark. But the powder keg was already there. This wasn't just about, boys wanting to see girls. It was about authority. This generation, they were coming of age in a changing world, and these old rules, they just felt suffocating.
It makes sense. And then we have Daniel Cohn-Bendit entering the picture, right? Danny the Red, this charismatic student leader who, well, he wasn't afraid to challenge anyone.
Exactly. Cohn-Bendit, he was quick-witted, sharp-tongued. He became the symbol of this rebellion. And there's this incident with the Minister of Youth and Sports that really sums it up.
Right.
So the minister goes to Nanterre to open a new sports center. He's totally oblivious to what's really bothering the students.
Oh, I bet Cohn-Bendit had something to say about that.
You know it. He calls out the minister right there in public for ignoring their concerns, especially the dorm rules. It's ironic, isn't it?
It really is that a debate about swimming pools and dorms,
Became a flashpoint for this massive social unrest.
the irony is not lost.
It shows the disconnect, right? The older generation holding on to these traditional values, and this younger generation desperate for change. And then you have the media. TV, it was becoming so powerful. And these images, the students protesting, the clashes with police, barricades going up in Paris, it captivated everyone.
It wasn't just words in a newspaper anymore.
Exactly. You could see it happening, feel the energy.
And then there were those slogans, "It is forbidden to forbid," "Under the paving stones, the beach." Oh, and "Be realistic, demand the impossible." They were everywhere, all over Paris. What were they trying to say?
Those slogans, they were more than just words. They captured the spirit of the time, like, it is forbidden to forbid. It's about rejecting authority, breaking free from a society that felt, well, too rigid.
Like it was holding them back.
Yeah, exactly. And under the paving stones, the beach. That one, it's this yearning for something more, something better. Like, let's replace the harshness of life with something beautiful.
And then "Be realistic, demand the impossible." That's so idealistic, like they really believed they could change everything. Were these slogans effective, though? Or were they too vague?
That's a good question. They captured the rebellious spirit, this desire for a more just society, but maybe they were too broad. It's hard to turn those ideals into actual demands.
That makes sense. So then the workers joined the protest. Before that, they didn't seem too interested in what the students were doing, right? They had their own problems to deal with.
They did. But there were a lot of factors converging. France, like a lot of Europe at the time, was seeing labor unrest. The post-war boom, it was slowing down, inflation was going up, workers were feeling
So
squeezed.
they saw the students taking action, standing up to the system.
And it resonated. It was like, hey, those kids can do it, so can we.
They inspired each other.
Exactly, a feedback loop. And again, those images in the media, they played a huge role. Workers saw those students and thought, we can do that too.
And then, bam, this massive general strike. I read that something like 10 million workers, 2/3 of the workforce, went on strike. What were they demanding?
Their demands were very concrete: higher wages, better benefits, job security. They wanted to improve their lives, And their involvement changed everything. It wasn't just student protests anymore. It was a full-blown crisis.
The whole country was shutting down.
It was. And the government, they tried to appease the workers. They offered some pretty significant concessions.
boy.
A big increase in the minimum wage, better working conditions. A lot, actually. It was a victory for the workers, really.
But it didn't end the strikes.
Nope. By that point, it had become about more than just those specific demands. It was deeper: dignity, being heard, rejecting a system that they felt ignored them.
So they weren't satisfied.
There's a story about a union leader. He presents this amazing deal to workers at a Renault factory. Big victory, right? And they just shout back, "Not good enough."
Wow.
It shows you the power of collective action. When people realize they have power, that they can disrupt things, well, the stakes change.
It's not just about winning a few concessions anymore. So were the students and workers able to join forces? Did they create this united front that everyone's hoping for?
Well, a lot of people hoped for that, A worker-student alliance, like a true force that could change France forever.
It seemed possible.
Yeah, it did, didn't it? But the truth is, their paths, they ran alongside each other, but they didn't really converge.
I guess their backgrounds are so different. Students dealing with these big philosophical ideas.
Questioning everything.
And workers just trying to make their lives better.
Right now. Exactly. There were attempts to bridge the gap. Students went to factories, tried to connect, big rallies with both groups.
It makes sense.
But a true united front never quite happened.
So, in the middle of all this chaos,
Hmm?
where was de Gaulle, the president, this
Yeah.
almost mythical figure? How did he react?
Oh, it's interesting. At first, he almost dismissed the students, like they were just scared of exams.
Really?
Yeah, it shows that generation gap, right?
Totally.
But as things got worse, the workers joined in, the country was paralyzed. De Gaulle, he realized this was serious.
And it must have been a shock to his system. A war hero, the symbol of France.
Exactly. And suddenly his authorities being challenged, people questioning his leadership, it must have shaken him.
You think so?
De Gaulle, he really believed in his destiny to lead France. And this uprising, it was a direct challenge to that belief.
So what did he do?
He went back and forth, trying to appease people, then threatening to use force. He even offered to resign.
To resign.
Yeah, if it would restore order, but then he'd go back to being authoritarian. I'll crush this unrest.
He was all over the place.
It shows that even de Gaulle, this incredibly powerful figure, he was struggling to understand what was happening.
It really shows how powerful the movement was, that it could shake him like that.
Right. And then, at the end of May, de Gaulle does something truly dramatic. He disappears.
He disappears.
Gone. Nobody knows where he is for hours. People thought he'd fled the country.
Wow. What was he thinking?
Well, whether it's planned or not, it worked. This disappearance created a vacuum. Panic, uncertainty, and then just as suddenly he comes back.
He returns.
Yeah, and gives this powerful speech on the radio. He rallies the nation, appeals to their patriotism, plays on their fear of chaos.
So he turns a moment of weakness into strength.
It's a classic move. And it worked. His supporters, they rallied around him. The government cracked down. The police cleared the streets. The strikes ended.
So the establishment won in the end.
On the surface, maybe. But May 68, it changed French society. It challenged the old ways. It gave a voice to the marginalized. It started a conversation about the future of France, a conversation that's still going on today.
It shows how complex these events are. You can't just say it was a success or a failure.
Exactly. And looking back, May 68 gives us so much to think about. Social change, collective action, the tension between holding on to the past and moving forward.
Even the most stable societies can change. The status quo can be challenged. And even if those challenges don't create immediate change, they plant the seeds for something new. Well, that was May 68. It's a story that still has a lot to teach us, I think. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.